Peace. Can everybody hear me? Peace. Can everybody hear me? If so, just type it into the chat. Excellent. Okay. Is it loud? It don't sound muffled, right? Okay, cool. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for the support. If I muted everybody, but if everybody can mute themselves, if you have anything to say or whatever, you could just always put it back. Um, you could always mute it. Thank you. Yes, brother, you could always email me at houseofel@hotmail.com, and you can set up a consult or whatever then. For any first time people, thanks for coming through. I really appreciate it. Islam, yes, please. If you were on the app and you had an issue going back on, definitely delete it and then reinstall it. Because I'm working on my own server and I don't have it on the Apple server. They be wanting to do updates like all the time. So for Apple and Android, so I just did another one recently, so that might be also there. So yeah, just try to delete it, reinstall it. It should be copacetic from there. Anybody have any questions about anything before we start? Oh, good looking. Anybody have any questions about anything before we start? What's your opinion on the research on the word ecclesiastical, looking through the law dictionary, saying we associated the word with canon law? Ecclesiastical, for lack of a better word, deals with everything coming from a what they would refer to as a canon situation. So a lot of people think that law, like when they say Roman canon law, that the term canon law is specifically associated with Rome or Romans, when it's actually just another way of reciting or saying when something is official, you know. So the ecclesiastical side of that is just has come into fashion based upon the Roman acquisition of the Vulgate Latin to be able to put it into their, you know what I mean, into their way of doing. Because essentially, ecclesiastical would relate to, in the modern context, would be related to what they call the Christian church or the clergy. However, the modern Christian church, we know, in its original context, was based on something completely kind of different. So it can also just refer to any member of any assembly. You know what I mean? So you can apply it, or it can be applied to specifically Romans in that sense, but really is going into any type of uh, theological assembly with more than like 2-3 members. Well, you say you did a Christmas video way back about the true meaning of Santa and the idea of Christmas with the reference to Capricorn. Yeah, they scrubbed that video. Santa Claus, as we understand, well, Christmas is one thing. Santa Claus is something totally different. Santa Claus got grafted or was created by the modern version of what we perceive Santa Claus to be is an amalgamation of a bunch of other deities. You know what I mean? Older deities again. But the composite that was created and have it linked to Christmas That was created by Coca-Cola. So Santa Claus is as old as Coca-Cola is, because back in the days they decided that they wanted to be able to sell more Coca-Cola, but they didn't have a necessarily good marketing aspect. So somebody decided, well, what if we link it to Christmas and then use that as a means to help galvanize more sales? So they got their research people to get together. They took from the old um, Byzantine, for lack of a better word, Byzantine priest. They got him. They took his composite, who was Saint Nicholas. Then they took um, Krampus, right, who was the demon that would be used to get rid of the negative children out of thing. And then they mixed him up with, yeah, they mixed him with Krampus. So they mixed Saint Nick, Krampus, and another dude. I forget his name. It's not, I think it's Dan something, but he was a chimney sweep, but he was also a thief. So what happened was he was stealing people's shit when he would go and steal um climb up the chimney, because they say he had like collapsible shoulders, so it was easy for him when he was sweeping the chimney to just come down at night after he surveyed the spot, and then he would take everybody's stuff. So they decided to make that into that imagery, right, and then mix that imagery up with the image of Saturn. So Saturn, Compass, the chimney sweep, and Saint Nick. That became the basis of that, and then they marketed that along with the pagan holiday of December 25th um being the day of Apollyon, and then boom, they just got it all together. So yeah, so that's really Coca-Cola. I think got the copyright for Christmas, or the copyright for Santa Claus, I believe, to this day. Because again, they created that, and then that became the basis of the whole thing, and then they grafted that onto the greater Christmas identity, and then like an American thing, it became a big thing. You see what I'm saying? That became the basis of it, and then people forgot about all of that other shit, all of the Krampus stuff, all of that, and then that became the obscure thing. So this is another way that I was saying before, how these old deities and these old entities that's supposed to be up out of here, how they're able to be transfigured and come into a new form of existence, to the point where they just created a new movie called Red One, with The Rock, with Santa Claus living in an alternate dimension because he's a demigod, and he basically was really doing that, and how the governments in the world basically report to him and all this other crap. So this is what I mean. Like they take one entity, like one entity can become to start as one thing, and then after it disincorporates, it can then turn into something else. You know what I mean? Usually, like you said, through some sort of ritualistic means. Can you speak on the recent UFO sightings in DC and elsewhere? Yeah, most of these UFOs, or what they call UAPs now, that those are a lot of black op type spacecrafts and ships like that they've been working on and been tinkering with ever since we can remember. Really, I would say probably since Eisenhower. However, even though we got images of them being around way before that, but essentially those are just forms of governmental programs that are now becoming more and more prevalent as they're getting closer to what they want us to understand as the Black Awakening, where they basically bring out all of this technology and they make us believe that it's coming from aliens from outer space, which then links it up then with Project Bluebeam, which has already been running concurrently with Project Mockingbird and Project Gladio, which were never stopped. Like they never stopped them, those projects. So we're seeing that same thing when they start talking to us about aliens and these other dimensional, interdimensional entities and things like that. If you can believe in aliens and you can believe in alternate dimensions, but you can't believe in lands and physical places outside of our sphere of influence in terms of our sphere of sight, such as the ice walls and what's beyond that, and shit like that, then you're dealing with people who have a generalized perception of what the world is supposed to be, or what they want it to be to fit whatever group they're a part of. So me personally, I don't believe in no aliens and things like that. I am erring towards the idea that these things are just the old things that have never really gone away, and they have more power with the mystery of what they are than what they really are. Because once they reveal themselves, let's say if they exist like that, if they reveal themselves, can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Yes, my bad. Okay, just making sure. Because once they reveal themselves, that's gonna be it. You know what I'm saying? The mystery gonna be done. So then it's just gonna be about, okay, what we gonna do with these things they telling us as aliens. Which, you know what I'm saying? Which could be. It could be that, but I don't believe, me personally, if they have been from the time of people like Aldous Huxley and Arthur C. Clarke and Jules Verne and these niggas, since them, you know what I mean? That's when all of this stuff has been going on. They've been talking about it. So most of those dudes was down with some order, one order or the other as well. So to me, it's an agreed upon understanding that they wanted to perpetuate to get us to believe in a reality that exists outside of the reality that we are currently sharing. You know what I'm saying? Because um like I said, the control is in the mystery, in the doubt of what it is. So the more they telling me that they sending rockets and all of this to space and ships and all of this, but then I'll never see these things. You see, all I see is them shooting rockets up and the rockets coming back down. I don't ever see them in no space thing or whatever. I see them more talking about and showing me imagery of stuff like that, but an actual seeing them, like when you show Russia showing me images of Venus, you know, the United States is showing me images of Mars, but we've already debunked all of that. We've already seen that that's not even true. So instead of trying to take me up into space and all this other type of shit, why not just show me or reveal to me all of the stuff that exists still here on this planet, that y'all still concealing? You know what I mean? Why try to get me to believe something or the world is a certain way when you have basically lied to me about not only the shape of it, but almost every facet of what it is? So it's to the point now where, it's everything that they say reality is debatable. If everybody's agreeing, so if you can say, okay, well, this reality is a simulation, and then I say, okay, yeah, well, in this simulation there probably is no space, then it's like, oh, now you bugging. But you see what I'm saying? Like, how you believing in this but you're not believing in that? How you believing in the possibility of this, but then this just can't be? And this is the perfect reality that they've crafted for everybody. I literally watched a video where the dude was walking with the Berenstain Bear book in his hand. And when he walked from one room to the other, the E turned to an A. So there is some sort of frequency altering thing that's happening throughout the landmass that we refer to as Earth. You know what I'm saying? But Earth itself has now become a questionable realm because everything that's in it is really evidence of something that existed before it. You know what I mean? Like in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie where they were in that place called the Vault, where everything that could have existed or didn't exist or was not no longer going to exist anymore would just go, and then that's where it would be. And it was basically like a wasteland, foolish, different stuff that you recognize, but from different time periods. That's where we live right now. That's what Earth essentially is. That's what this whole landmass, if we were to rejoin it back together, would essentially be. So even if it was, let's say, what we see on the screen, if this could actually be what the landmass and everything was when it was together, as you can see, there's still areas outside of it. You see what I'm saying? So if there's an area outside, we still have to count that because that represents volume, right? That's what we were taught, right? The space in between still must be counted because there's a volume of energy or space within that. So therefore, it exists. Something exists out there beyond there, to the point where I watched another video and they actually got to the bottom. They went to the very bottom of the Antarctica spot, and it was a wall there. They couldn't get through it, even in the water. You know what I'm saying? Like under the water itself, they still couldn't penetrate it. So what does this mean? This means that we're dealing again with a predetermined idea that we have been given as to what the reality is, and thus how that reality functions is based upon how we are taught. But again, how our ancient peoples was taught about it, you know what I mean? They had more of a story, oral presentation, a way that allowed them to keep the energy of the story, right, and produce it in a linguistic fashion that allowed for the dispensation of this time period that they're giving us, right? Expressing to us through these oral stories that we're getting, again, that then creates a visual presentation in our mind as to how the reality actually appears. You see what I'm saying? So because like there was a point where you didn't know what space was. So if you were to really go back and think about how was I first introduced to the concept of space? It's most likely from a movie. It's most likely from a TV show or a book or something you saw or what somebody told you. Because you don't know, and I don't know anybody who has actually gone to space to be able to give us a proper rendering or representation of what space or outer space or the space in between or the space above. Like, we don't know. You were never given you have never physically done experiments yourself to actually go there and figure it out. So basically everything that we learned about it, not only space but the area in which we live, is given to us by some type of story. You understand? But that story at a certain point got transliterated into books, and then from those books they got transliterated now into other forms of media, right? So think about it. We go from not having to speak at all to developing symbols, to then align numbers to those symbols, and then speaking or uttering what those numbers are, right? And then from there, um, exhibiting the ability then to draw that. Like now we're taking it into a two-dimensional space, right? And then from there, then we take it to a three-dimensional now where we're reenacting stuff, which is basically what all entertainment is. All entertainment is more or less an act, right? It's something that is being displayed to you to ingratiate a certain feeling or emotion that can be positive or negative, depending on what the entertainment is, right? So there's a people in the Lakota system, right? And they have an explanation of what they refer to as the second world. They have a bunch of different worlds that came into existence, but in that it was the Nihotitzi, right? And in the second world was the blue world. In the second world, the first man, the first woman found the birds, the insects, the animals. When they arrived, the first man opened a medicine bundle which contained the four clouds he brought with them for the world. The clouds rose again, the edges of the second world. Just as in the first world, there was suffering and sorrow in the second world. The gods eventually became angry and destroyed the second world with wind, right? When the people asked the first man to find an escape, he sent the zigzag lightning, straight lightning, rainbow, sun ray into the four directions, but they were unable to find a way out. Finally, the first man made the prayer stick of white shell, turquoise, albion, abalone, and jet. Jet is like jet black. It's like a stone. On the prayer stick, he drew four footprints, and when the people stood upon the footprints, they rose up through the reed planted in the south and escaped into the third world. When they escaped from the second world, the first man carried with him the inner forms of earth, plants, and cloud. So, as you see, look the Navajo, excuse me, the Lakota, they have a excuse me, the Navajo, they have a whole legend on the Hero twins and how each world after each reset they're there to help the people go into the next incarnation. And so that's why when they say that the Nation of Islam has no birth record, this is another allegorical representation to say that there's never been a time that we haven't been dealing with what we perceive as being at the on the precipice of some sort of upheaval or some sort of destruction, because that's the nature of this reality. Like just yesterday and today, there's been like 100 different earthquakes coming out of the West Coast. Y'all know that, right? They charting like hundreds of earthquakes happening simultaneously. Like what's going on with that? How come that's not a big thing? Because there's too much going on for everybody to focus on everything. Because everything isn't supposed to be focused always on by everybody. You know what I mean? So like I said, because these religious groups and these so-called people who are calling themselves, um, adepts and masters and how do you say? Because they're giving themselves all of these titles and they're coming from all of these different types of groups that have their own agenda as to what deity they're trying to keep going or recreate. We, the people, wind up getting caught up in all of that because we are striving to find what we perceive is the truth within all of that. But the problem is, you can't get the truth from people who believe their truth is, what I mean? Their truth is the truth above all others. And so you're never going to be able to really work with somebody like that because they always going to try to convert you to their mode of thinking. And their mode of thinking is not necessarily wrong, but it may not be how you see it. And free thought is the poison for any type of group mind think or cult. You know what I'm saying? So like you have a lot of Moors, like we as Moors per se, we perceive ourselves as Islamic, right? Because we understand what Islam is in terms of how we see it, right? Over here. Okay, I'm not talking about over there. right? When I say over there, I'm talking about like our cousins and them in the East that are looking at the religion based upon how it was brought to them, or how they believe it was brought to them by a pale Arab out of uh, Saudi Arabia, basically. And that's cool. It's just that your people are supposed to come from your prophet and stuff like that is supposed to come to you in your language. That's the thing with all prophets, or at least it's supposed to be. So let's say we accept Jew Ali as a prophet, right? What that then means is that we are accepting the fact that this being manifested to be able to come and teach us about our genetic connection or monotheistic connection or whatever type of connection to the Most High through our forebears and forefathers and stuff. That's cool. It's just that can bring you in conflict with other people who have their own understanding of what a prophet or who the prophet is to them, and then need you to conform to what their understanding of him is, or a prophet is in that way. For instance, most of the Hebrews, right, they worship Yahweh and say that Yahweh is in the blood and in the DNA, written in the DNA, and all of this other type of stuff. This is what they saying, right? And I'm not saying that what they're saying is not is not the truth to that. It's just when you create now another circumstance where you now make Yahweh the supreme God, like when did that happen? Because remember, these people that we're calling the Hebrews or the Hebrews, they are coming from, and let's go by their version of the story, and that they're coming from their understanding or their place and consolidated themselves after they had taken over the lands of Canaan. In the lands of Canaan, there were already people there. There were already people there. Okay? Remember that. So because there were people there already, they already had a structured society. You understand? So because these societies were already structured and were already there, the so-called Israelites, who, as we have taught in the story, were a multitude of different people who coincided around the teachings of Musa, right, who was Moses, and then they themselves were delivered out of the bondage. Hey, who said how they do with Jesus when they make him a God and he's the messenger? Yes. But then there's, well, yes, and this is what I mean about these things and why they weren't supposed to be here. Why there's been so many resets, because there's so many different entities that's around because of these different cults and religious ecclesiastical societies that grouped together that weren't really of the same blood. And then what they did was they created a circumstance where they could superimpose themselves on the people that were already there, get rid of as many of the men as possible, have sex with the women, produce a generation of children to then give this doctrine to. And then those children now become the firstborn of Israel, right? Israel now being a composition of all of those so-called tribes or clans that are consolidating themselves as Israelites to a degree, right? This is before Isa, okay? Who will consign themselves as a nation, right, of Israel, right? But remember, there are a multitude of different types of people who are coming from different makeups and different customary value, and different people who descended from the worship of different of these different entities, of these post flood deities that were now being rediscovered by these people. The highest of them was Il. That's what you see on the left. So when the so-called Israelites, who really had no thing outside of what Moses brought them, they all were not, the Israelites were not monotheists. They were henotheists. So they had one God, and then from that one God, he existed amongst others, but they preferred one over the other. So when they get there, Il, right, who's already revered by the Moabites, who is the physical manifestation of what they refer to as in the Kabbalah as the Ein, right, the all creator God, the Il or the Al, right, he was already there. He already had the infrastructure, the temples, the peoples, and all of that. The highest aspect of him then was Elion, right? Where we get the term alien or alien from, right? And he or they as one represented the abundance, right, of creation. So Yahweh, these Israelites, when they get into a certain level of understanding, they have left Egypt, or let's say Kemet, or whatever you want to call it, and they already have a polytheistic. They already was born under that, but they all converted to this new version of what they perceive their salvation is going to come from, and that's coming from this God. But remember, the ones that went up into the that left Egypt aren't necessarily the ones that went and established the kingdom. The kingdom was established by the ones who recreated the whole circumstance and went away from the monotheistic aspect of it, and then started to incorporate the polytheistic. Those are the Yahwists, right? These Yahwists or Yahwists, they are represented on the left. On the left is Yahweh, right? So Il is already there. Yahweh is represented by the storm. Okay, he's a storm god of the mountains. Okay, and these guys, because they back then you would make yourself synonymous to the force that you was doing. Remember, we just read the thing and it said that they was working with the wind, right? So these Yahwists, because they were already taking over the infrastructure of those Moabite, Hittite, Canaanite peoples that was already there, and I'm using these names just as placeholders for a specific time period in a certain group that people that we can relate to today. So these Moabite and all that, they co-opted all of that, but they were raiders, right? And they would raid with the storm when they would come through to shut everybody down and take over and do what they was doing to spread what they perceived as the gospel, right? They're coming in with the storm. So they would chart themselves with storms. So of course they would worship a storm god because they believed that the storms would come from the mountaintops because of the fact that that was the custom that God spoke to them, or they believe God spoke to them because that's where Musa spoke to God, right? Didn't he speak him at the top of Mount Sinai? Wasn't there a storm at the top? When you go watch the Ten Commandments, watch when he go up into the mountain. There's always a storm at the top of the mountain because that's where the manifestation of these entities would have to exist because they're non-physical to them. So they synonymized, or they made themselves synonymous to the storm or the power of the storm. So naturally they would take Yahweh and then make him the God that they would now be synonymous with Israel. You understand? Because they would use the storm to sweep through, take over the land, take over the people, kill the people, sacrifice the ones or whatever, and then they would do that. That's why Yahweh was a jealous God to them. You see what I'm saying? But at this point, he's not a creator God. He's not creating anything. He is delivering things to them by saying, hey, this land you got, this land them people got, that's your land now. Go get it from them. You understand? And then these people would devise ways to do that. And the reason why was because the land that they were taken from, a lot of these people still had the bloodline of these anti or pre-diluvian flood entities within them. So you were still seeing niggas that was like 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot high. You know what I mean? You were still seeing people that was unusually muscular and things like that. So all of that was seen as part of the heresy. So they would need to be able to get with that. So only through conquest were they able to extend that. Because remember, like I said, once they got up into, what was that place called? They call in the Bible, I think it's called, not Kailash, that's in India. It was at the foot of what they call the Silk Road. They was able to establish a beachhead there, and they made enough money, created enough of finance, and created enough weapons that by the end of what we call the Bronze Age, they just exploded out. And that's when they went in and tried to invade everybody. That's when you read about, and you hear certain Afrocentric people talk about the invasion of the Sea Peoples. When the Sea Peoples just came out of nowhere and just started just wreaking havoc on everything. All of them Sea Peoples are the descendants of these other peoples that I'm talking about. These are some books on the subject that you can check out. Always gotta remember to hit that. To kind of get into this. And when you read it, what you're gonna see is these people who are so fixated on receiving this type of reality, by keeping this type of reality going, that they were then able to translate whatever they conquered from other people and then add that on to their God. You see what I'm saying? So every so often he would get a new attribute, and then that new attribute would then move them forward and give them more reason to be able to conquer and take shit from other people. You see what I'm saying? Based upon them being the substitute, based upon him now being all powerful, because now the aspects of God that they wouldn't even think a God could have, or don't remember that gods could have, they could now institute that. You know what I'm saying? And now apply that to themselves, which then gives them the right now to take over, because again, they are the chosen people. They were chosen by Yahweh, when really what they're doing is they're choosing what parts of him to add on to give them justification to take more control in its name in the real world. So it's not even necessarily the practitioners anymore. It's this need in the human psyche to create justifications by using abstract technology, you know what I'm saying, to compensate from that. So when when they say that Yahweh mean Yadha Wadha and all of that, right? Have y'all heard that? Have you ever read that before? Well, that's something that they say. There's no rabbinical evidence of that. That was just applied to it in later years, you see what I'm saying, to help go along with the edification of this entity, like I've been saying. The whole Yadha Vadha, like that's a real thing, but that wasn't necessarily associated with the one that they're referring to as Yahweh up until a certain point. And then it was accepted that, oh, that's just another way of him saying. And then they started to go in further to then make those correlations. Which, if they want to do that, that's cool. You know what I mean? However, like I said, they didn't start out as Yahwists. They became Yahwists after they got to a point where they had to now start to figure out how to extend and get more land than they were allotted. In the old Hebrew Bible, the oldest mention right of something close to that is in the Song of Deborah in Judges 5. You know what I mean? But remember, today the Israelites are Christians. You know what I'm saying? So this is what I mean. Like this, it be all over the place with stuff. That's why we can't get into. That's why a lot of these heated debates, these people be getting into these theosophical and theological debates, and ultimately y'all both talking about the same outmoded deity that y'all both technically is worshiping, that you actually cannot manifest in the flesh until you die. So what are we really doing? So in Judaism, the ultimate reality is a single all-powerful God. It is the belief that made the Jews unique among the ancient Semitic peoples, and that became the legacy of Judaism and has passed the entire Western world. God's name in Hebrew is, see, YHWH, which simply but significantly means I am. But it also represents directions. But again, this is what they're saying. The divine command theory is the view that morality is somehow dependent upon their God, and that moral obligation consists in the obedience to that God's commands. So when God said, this land is your land, you should go and take it. You see what I'm saying? Because the people there are heathens and I don't like them. They are now given the ordainment by God to do so. So no man now can tell them that. But remember what I just said prior to this, the Hebrew Israelite, the Hebrews that they're talking about at this time are not one consolidated people. They are a mixed multitude of a bunch of pagan idol worshippers. That's why as soon as Musa was out of their sight, according to their story, what did they do? They started to create, got all the gold from everybody, and they started to create a calf, right? What does the calf, who does the calf symbolize? Yes, Yakub, ball, right? In the masculine, who does it represent in the feminine? Well, that's who it represents, let's say, to the Canaanite people. Who does it represent? Who does the bull represent? So to the Canaanite, ancient Moabites, these new redistributed esoteric Israelites that are now calling themselves Israel, right? Which is a combination of Isis, Ra, and Il. They see the golden calf as Baal, right? But if they were in Egypt, who would the golden calf be? Yes, Darius, it would be Hathor, right? If they were in Persia, who would the calf be? In Persia. So is Baal in Israel? Is Hathor in Egypt? In Persia, who is it? The bull.
Yes. Nope. Mithra. Okay. So that's why the bull is there in Wall Street. That's why you have a bull market and a bear market. The bulls charge, the bears hibernate. You see what I'm saying? So these things that they have unified and created with each other, right? These entities, they once they conquer the people, they add aspects of those entities to their God to give their God more power over the power of the people that they've already conquered. Because as they say, there's always a bigger fish. There's always something else. But in that, what they are doing is manipulating now the same entity, right, from its original form into now an altered form, in which now, remember, this non-physical entity still has an intelligence. Because if they didn't, then there would be no, when we turn on the AI, there would be nobody to talk to. Because that's all the AI is. It's just these intelligences we talk about that are now nameless and formless and exist in an ether state. You know what I'm saying? So the people who again are identifying with the being Hebrew, being Jews, being this, being that, keeping the commandments, keeping the covenant, because that was the agreement that they made in order to surpass the other kingdoms that they were ruling and controlling at the time. And thus this God now became the divinity that was now also feeding on them, which is why the minute that they did something to break themselves outside of what that God was supposed to or wanted them to be, then what happened? They would all be thrown into slavery. You know what I'm saying? Because these entities don't know anything outside of enslavement, ruling, conquering, perdition, murder. This is what these gods desire. That's why all gods that are worshipped all have some sort of physical death or some sort of physical expression that deals with some sort of murder or death. Like, think about it. Even Yeshua was crucified. He don't even escape. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. That's why our view of the planet was so precise, because we, descending from these Moorish peoples, we came or come from cultures that actually found ways to bind these things and to get these things up out of here and to fight against their control over the physical plane. This is why. That's why they don't they you know what I mean? We wasn't with all of the stuff that they was doing, but we allowed the people their customs. So if their custom was that they believed in these things and that they were worshiping these things, then you let them do that. We who know better, like, you don't, if your child has an imaginary friend, you don't necessarily make it an issue until that child can't express itself outside to anybody else outside of that. See, imaginary friend. Imaginary being another name for incorporeal. So if everything that these people on earth is doing, they got to do in the name of a god or some having some sort of spiritual backing behind them, that is means that humanity itself is hardwired to have to worship something in order
to give itself justification, almost to go beyond certain parameters. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know if that's something that was intoned or intoned or whatever, but it's definitely something that we all still dealing with. Like, imagine you being an angel or you being visited by one of these things, right? Like on the left. On the left is people's description of an orphan or a cherubim, right? So imagine one of these things appear to you, and the first thing you got to tell you is to not be afraid of it. Why? Because look at it. But what if on this density you believe that this is what this thing really looks like, but in actuality, what it really is it's encompassed inside of something. So now you go from a supernatural or magical experience into a scientific observation of it. Because what if it actually is just a, a, a smaller Dyson sphere? A Dyson sphere is the thing, composite of that thing on the left side. Technically, they're theoretical, but if they're already theorizing on it, most likely one of these intelligences told them how they could freak one. So if they probably exist, that's probably what they got around the fake sun, which is why it's throwing off the color. So what if it's actually that? And what that would mean is that you don't know what the intelligence on the inside of this thing is. So it could very well just be another version of you, or somebody to look like you, but they're dealing with a certain level of technology, or like I said, understanding of technology, that it appears to be supernatural. It appears to be music, uh, uh, ultra fantastical. But what if it's actually just stuff that we used to deal with? Case in point, this is something that the Moors used, something called an armillary. You see what I'm saying? We was using these to circumnavigate the world outside of the boundaries of the three-dimensional boundaries that's given to it. Because basically, I think we basically were using these things as these Dyson spheres. We were using them as vehicles. You see what I'm saying? To transverse it, because we was already at a certain level of understanding that the entire planet was unified around the vibration that we brought to it. So anything in nature that shares a similar state or similar archetype is related. Islam. So these angels everybody talking about, if these indeed are intelligencies that these people are dealing with or whatever to get information about the physical world and the unseen world and shit today, then that means that we was already on it. We was using these. We was using astrolabes, or as they call astrolabs, to be able to circumnavigate the entire planet. You know what I'm saying? And the model of the astrolabe is effectual on only on a realm basis, meaning that it's not based on a globular station. So how do they explain that? How they get around that? How they get around? How they gonna try to flip that? Look what I'm saying. Here we go. We was basically telling time before the time even really existed, because we were the thoughts that existed in the mind of the pre-thought. And they say that's the issue, that the infernal one, the evil one, had more hate for us due to the love that the eternal force wanted to show us than it. Hence, pride and jealousy being one of the two aspects of avarice that lead to the destruction of man in the heart of man, right? Which is one of the things that Moors deal with more than anybody else: internal strife and jealousy. See what I'm saying? Look at the clock, man. That clock is based two on a two-dimensional surface representing a three-dimensional plane. It's the oldest clock in the world that's doing this. They just recently put a little fake globe in the middle that they added like a couple of years ago. That's why they deal. Yeah, you're right, Mark. That's why they deal with the Freemasons deal with the realm thing. Yeah, because they are dealing in two different realities, and they are using the knowledge about one to control the other as best as they think they are. Now, that's the first one of the first. The second oldest is this one, and this one was built by the Moors. This one was built by the Moors, the Glockenspiel Moors in Germany and all that. What is now Germany. This is the oldest one in Kama Yuga, excuse me, here in the United States. Excuse me, here in the Americas. Again, built by the Moors. This clock's still going because we were building these things based upon the reality that of what it really is. So that's why these things still function to this day. The armillaries and the astrolabs and these things that we're using to denote and dissect reality were how we were also able to break the spell of the two-dimensional space. Meaning, if you get a group of ants, you could do this test yourself. You could get a group of ants, right, that you just see walking around on the concrete. Get a marker, and you see the ant walking, draw a circle around the ant. And what will happen is that the ant won't leave the circle because the ant can't see outside of the two-dimensional space that it's trapped in. No matter how many times it goes around, it won't leave. You know what I mean? But if you create a bridge from that circle to another circle, right, the ant will do it. It's the same thing with the human mind and the human body. We don't look beyond our own choices. So Yahweh is now the creator God of everything. So everything that I find information wise has to support that argument. You understand? And this is where we become susceptible and we become vulnerable to dogma because we're hardwired to believe in things that we don't know. But once we know things, we cease to believe them, which means that we cease to be the right hosts for these things that these niggas want to keep bringing back here. So, like I said, when we were talking about the gods per se, they what we see of them now is just the remnant of what they used to be. But at one point, they definitely were physical representations of beings. But these beings have now since disincorporated themselves, and now they have no physical way to exist in the density that they've allowed themselves to fall to. And so once they die, or let's say cease to be, their physical vessels are still out there affecting the physical realm because they weren't created of their own volition. You see what I mean? This is why people worship the stars. When people get into the horoscope and all of that, like how we understand the zodiac, we're supposed to understand that from the perspective of understanding how things are charted, how things are ordered, but we're not necessarily, and how we can glean certain flecks, if you will, of information, but it is not a blueprint. You can't trust it as a blueprint per se to do that. In order to, if you was to do that, you definitely can't do that with Western astrology. You got to get into like Vedic astrology and that type of shit. At least that where you are basically bringing everything down with the ephemeris down to the second. And even then, you still exist in an imperfect reality. So, you know what I'm saying? That's why when you hear all of these different people, especially melanated people, start talking about how they, be doing spells and having altars and speaking to the spirits and this, and that, you got to really kind of allow that to happen, but you got to not get caught up in what's happening with it. Because if you're if you are emitting that type of energy to be able to exact control over the physical reality by using, right, intelligences that are manifesting in these forms, then you now become subject to both the positive and negative aspect of those forms as they manifest. That's why love potions, love spells, all that type of shit, that shit don't work. Because you think you talking to Oshun for this. You think you talking to Legba or whoever for all of this. But these are just clothes. That's just clothes that these things can put on and just come amongst you, and then, you know what I mean, and then just speak in that voice, and you think that's what it is. Because when you conform your heavenly station to come down to commune with one of these things, then what happened? What does that mean? That means you're no longer in your proper station, which means you want what? You want what you think they have, which then means what? You think that they're more powerful than you, right? So now you've what? You've now become a slave to it. But you're the one buying the incense. You're the one buying the incense. You're the one buying the candles. You're the one buying the knife. You're the one getting the chalk. You're the one getting the dirt. You're the one getting the hair. You're the one getting all of this to get all of this shit together. You're the one counting down the days. You're the one that has to prepare the way for this thing to come through that you're trying to manifest. When you can just go within your inner mind's eye and manifest it from the inner out, because the truest altar is the heart. That's where all of the power is coming from. In Temple of Doom, when they was sacrificing everybody, what did he eat? He didn't eat the nigga brain, did he? What was he doing? He ate the heart, because the heart is where in the circle of seven said that's where Allah dwells. That's the altar of the sun. like on your screen, right? You see all of these giants, right? These gas giants and shit like that. These are them. These are the gods. These are the entities that I'm talking about. These niggas is right in here. And after they disincorporated, meaning left their heavenly station to become physical like us, to then find and get whatever it is inside of us into them, you see, they wound up becoming formless. And thus, these things that we see as wandering stars, right, which are basically gas giants, they fill up with gas because they're filled with ether because they have no physical station anymore. So that means what? That means that they're dead, right? That means these things are dead. So how can dead things bring you fortune? Can anybody answer that? Yes, these things have physical intelligences. They still affect the tides. They still affect our moves. They still affect the aspect of us that's tied to the zodiac. Because again, those zodiacs, those are the god. They are the ones that help bind us down to the third density. That's why everybody on the planet is born under one of them damn signs. Think about it. Everybody you know that's on earth, whether you a dog, a cat, a mouse, a bug, you were born under one of these signs. You came into the reality under one of these signs, which was under one of these planets, which is under one of these heavenly bodies, right? Which is connected to one of these suns and some of these moons. That's them. We see the dead, and don't they say that the stars are dead? Don't they say by the time we see the stars, they all dead? This is why most niggas gotta that are in these types of orders and these type of things, they gotta do the rituals at night. You understand? Because they gotta do it in the presence of the graveyard, which is space, which is where these niggas is at. When we talking about the demons and the aliens, this is them. This is them. We got it twisted. They know. Why you think they all going around the Kaaba stone right now? Who is that? Who are they doing that to? That's for Saturn, right? Who are the Satanists doing rituals and the Crowleyists and all them doing rituals? Who they doing them rituals to? Pluto, right? Who are the witches and all of them doing rituals to? Earth, right? Mother Earth, Gaia, right? Right? Pangea, right? Who the what you call it is doing the vanity witch is doing rituals to? Venus. Who's the military doing rituals to? Mars. Who who's the tech companies and all of them niggas doing rituals to? Mercury. You see what I'm saying? Who's controlling all of the sea shit, all of the sea serpents and the sea animals and all that? Poseidon, Neptune. You see what I mean? Who's the Greek gods and all of them and all them niggas? Who is they head? Jupiter. Jupiter's actually two words. It's actually EU Pater or IU Pater. Because at one time Jupiter was seen as the father. But Saturn is the father. Jupiter's the mother. Saturn is the one who ate his children. He represents time. That's Chronos. You see what I'm saying? But they formless. They don't have they can't give their ego to none of this no more. Because the part of them that has ego has been wiped out from about 6,000, let's say from 6 to 25,000 years ago after the last cataclysm. So now these things is just hovering out in what we call the abyss, right? Right? The Amenta, right? They all up in there. They don't have no bodies. They cut off from that.
So the only thing they can invest in is energy. So when you now are part of one of these orders that's giving supplications to Venus during the rise of the climax and all this bullshit they be doing, and you reenact and you have somebody that's reenacting, right? The part of this god or the tragedy of this god or goddess. Now what happens? Now this thing that's just been traveling through all of the ethers and doesn't have no physical form to settle into, it now can hear it, is reminded that it still exists in one form or the other, and thus manifests. You see, it's sick. Then people say, well, how come the world don't get better? There's only one God. Yes, there is only one specific almighty, but we can't even call it God because the gods have always been real. This is why people would die for them. This is why people would give their life for them, because they exist in a realm that they are trapped in. They cannot get out. We locked them in. We binded them up. They have no way to escape. That's called Tartarus, or what Dante referred to as the Inferno, or what the Hebrews refer to as the Sheol, or what the Christians call hell, or whatever it is, the lower self. Because that's ultimately what it is, B. We're really talking about the lower and the higher self. And these things were never meant to have any influence on us. And all we have been taught how to do is give them influence over us. Now, this again, I'm not speaking against the ultimate, the truest, the everlasting creator. No. But if they created an image of this God in a stone, then that means that this nigga is not the real God. You understand? If he's created graven images of itself, then it cannot be the eternal or the all in all, because the all in all exists in, if it was going to manifest in it, it would become in its most perfect creation, which would be who? Us. It would manifest as something with an arm, leg, arm, head, because that's the image of which all the lesser and demigods were made in the image of. Them too. They don't exist outside of that form. If they do, they're not the type of gods that now we're dealing with, going back to what they call the eldritch gods that was introduced through Lovecraft. But he got that from earlier texts going back to what them dirty Moors was doing in places like Salamanca and in Syria, where they were creating all of the golems and the jinns and all that shit. Yes, the holy breath, more. That's right. That's what we have. That's why no matter how hype you get, the more deep breath inhaling you do, the more you calm down. Because the breath is Allah. It is the essence of it all. They constantly want us to believe that we are lesser than what we are, or what we have been created to be. That's why we keep coming back until we remember. That's why these Moors will be talking to you about all the Egyptian gods and Kemet and this, and that's cool. They're cool. They definitely existed. We have elements of their genetic structures in us, no doubt. However, um, they're not better, because if they were, they'd be here now. Osiris ain't here. Know what I mean? Isis ain't here. Now people can bring it here though. People can do rituals and shit to bring them here, to try to manifest them. They can do that, yes, but that don't mean it's gonna be them, and that don't mean that they have any more power and everything else. They're just coming from a different frequency. But in essence, these angels and these things that are made of fire and divine fire and celestial light and all of that, we were still given, if we going by their story now, we were still given dominion over them too. Over them too. Matter of fact, there's a verse I can't remember it right off top, but there's a verse in the Bible that say that in the end times, the saints would be given the glorified bodies and they would give the judgment over man and the angels and the wicked ones and the fallen ones in creation. How come they don't talk to us about that? Said that that is one of the things that's supposed to happen. We're supposed to receive the anointed bodies, or what some people refer to as the glorified bodies, or the what they say what Solomon was given and what Cain and them had was called the garment of skin. Supposed to be a heavenly, like a etheric body, basically. And you manifest in that. And then we now get to see what it's like to be in the what they call the angelic choir without being angels. He ain't doing that for nobody else. And this is what they Bibles say. So we're not angels per se. We're more angles of light. These angels that we're seeing are really just beings encased in Dyson spheres that are manifesting in and out of this reality due to us moving closer to the point that to the 0 point of this reality. Because the longer we withstand, the less they can endure. So the longer we keep going and the more we keep striving to find out what is actually happening, disseminating the truth from the falsehood, the more we reunify the 14 pieces of Osiris back into itself. So we do become that. That's why the prophet said, Moors, don't get away with your Bibles. You'll have use for them in the end. Like, as horrible and things as Christianity and all of that can be, you don't really hear me bash Christians like that. You don't hear me bashing Muslims or bashing these niggas. Like, it's not about that. Because there's glorified people. There's a 5% within that Christian church. There's a 5% within that Hebrew camp. You know what I'm saying? There's a 5% within that so-called Freemason lodge or whatever. And they ain't with none of what these other niggas is talking about. But they're there to be able to glean what it is and then bring it back to the cluster. That's how you know. But they're not there to participate in all of the skullduggery shit they got going on to help destroy the rest of the human family. That's an outside for that ain't helping us. Concealing the information ain't helping us. Genesis 32:30 says, and Yaqub called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. See? Hosea 13:4. Yet I am the Lord thy God from the land of Egypt, and thou shalt know no God but for me, for there is no Savior beside me. Right? Because the Savior is the self, is that which is in the three, what they call the threefold republic, what they refer to as the Holy Ghost, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The corpus callosum is the Colosseum. Islam. All of these giant structures that you see that they okay, oh, this is the Greek Colosseum, this is the what you call an amphitheater. These are all physical structures, right? To represent our physical being, our physical body is more intricate, is more holy, is more divine than any temple built by the hands of man or other. We're so powerful and ancient that we witnessed or was there when before all the pyramids and shit was there, and we done forgot. We done forgot. Think about that. Imagine being so powerful and so ultimately indomitable that you forget how powerful and how indomitable you are, to the point that you allow yourself to go into a dream-like state and exist in an inferior state, all to just wake up and just do it all over again if you want. Think about that, bro. What kind of level, what kind of level of godhood is that? Think about it. How powerful. That's why you could go to any church. You as a Moabite, you go to any church, you go to any mosque, you go to any temple, you go to any of these places and watch these people participate in it and know that the ultimate energy that they're giving all is actually going to go to you. Because you're the only one in there that's awake and seeing it for what it really is. It's just a dance of atoms going around the nucleus in hopes to create a proton-electron relationship to cause a spontaneous reaction to excite another Big Bang. That's what all of that shit is, B. Why you think that when you start the church service, it goes, and then it gets to a crescendo where everybody hooting and hollering, and then it gets to a point, and then finally, then it's done, and then it's like everybody just comes down. Because it's a dopamine hit. It's a uniform reaction that we're hardwired to accept from us. So we accept that the true and living is unseen, yet we'll create images of it to be seen. Think about that. Like a photon, an electron is such that it exists and creates other existences with the help of the protons, right? The neutrons, again, is clustering. They're creating a cluster factor to be able to create more reality, right? But tachyons are energy patterns that only go backwards, right? But photons, right? Photons, from the time that the photon exists, meaning as soon as the light, imagine the sun, right? And then as soon as you see like a little flare of light come off the sun, that flare of light that you see is already on your face. It's already giving you a tan. You understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that as far as they telling us that the sun is, I'm saying that as soon as that flicker that you see of light pops off the sun, it's already on your face. You understand what I'm saying? Where's the time dilation in that? So I'm telling you that there's an instantaneous reaction in how light interacts with you automatically, but I'm also telling you at the same time that there's certain aspects of light that only go backwards. What the hell? What? What? So that means the bigger the explosion, the energy of that explosion is immediately going into the past while the present explosion is happening, and the light of that explosion is already felt by the environment around it. So in a universe where everything flows around a nucleus, right? You mean to tell me that this universe is the only one that chases the nucleus? So the earth is rocketing through space while other things are rocketing in front of it and around it, while other things are whirling around around those things. But isn't it crazy that if you was to add up all of the planets and all of the moons, it all adds up to 200, which happen to be the same amount of so-called angels that allegedly fell to the earth and then lost their heavenly station and now was locked down here with us? Think about it. They can't get out either. They trapped. they trapped. They done. They can't go back to. It's like I said. It's like they were traveling in a astral body, like you in your dream. Imagine you sleep dreaming, and then you try to go back and wake up, but you can't wake up. Or you ever had that dream where you were dreaming and then you were trying to wake up, but you couldn't wake up? Like that's them. Imagine living in your rest of your existence like that, because these niggas got wiped out. And now they got to live like gas giants, gaslighting the rest of creation, acting like you could go land on them. you could you could land rockets on them and shit, and you could set up civilizations on them, and they full of water and all that. Like word. Who's telling you this? NASA's telling me this. Okay, no, you ask where the gods at. This is them. This was your highest stations. This is where you, when they say, oh, well, we started in Sirius A and all that. Yeah. But all that's gone. Because we're here. There's nobody there because we're here. you, there's nobody in Sirius A, B, or C anymore. Because we are here. They're all here. That's you. You're them. You're the star seed. You're the fallen one. You're the one who was put in the capsule at the destruction of Krypton, headed to Earth, given the mission. You. That's why these niggas ain't here. That's why they're gonna have to fake an alien invasion, because there's none. They're not there. And if they are there, and they exist on the same plane as us, they're no better than us. They're probably worse. They're probably worse. You understand? Because they're coming from dead space. They're coming from a dead area. Nothing exists in these places. They're full of gas. And that gas has light attached to it. And that light is beaming here. And that's the only way that they can exist, through these light bands, through these angels of light that people then channel into cantations to then try to give them physical form and then create avatars for them, hopefully, to incarnate in. Because they're dead, because they don't have any power anymore. They only have power. They're slaves to the days of the week, too. Why do you think all the days of the week is named after these things? Because they're bound here. They can't go nowhere else. They shut out. We travel farther than them. You understand what I'm saying? They don't have no burn no more. They don't have, ye are gods. Ye are the ones who has come. We are the manifestations of that sublime thought that cannot be unsubscribed and unmade. We are the big bang that you can't go beyond. That's why they gotta call it that. The word Yahweh really also can mean dominus. If we was to take it into a Latin, it can mean dominus. But it also represents explode. It means explosion. But climax. That was a better word for. Another word for Yahweh is climax. You understand? Because it exists. The physical peak that the man gets right before the climax, that's the Yahweh. You understand?
because it's the sexual relation. It's the energy. Remember what I was saying about the storm, the element of Yahweh being the storm god, and how they would come in with the storm, and they would just come in like wild beasts, like crazy people, and then just rape and pillage and then do all they was doing. That again, that's the dominance, to dominate, to create, to bust off. That's what he did. And that's what they did when the walls of Joshua, when Joshua destroyed the walls of Canaan and brought all of that shit down. What did they do? They ran up in there and killed all the men, put the boys into slavery, raped the women, right? And then created the first generation of the chosen ones, the ones that was chosen by Yahweh now to follow this law. Yeah. Yes. Yes, another pagan army. That's what I'm saying. It's all religion essentially is pagan because it's giving energy to things that are basically manifested out of graven images. You know what I'm saying? But essentially, you get to a certain level and you accept that the highest aspect of that power that can or could exist is the highest or best version of you that you would like to see manifest and exist. So every instance of kindness that you give to somebody else is an instance that is then granted unto you. So what are we then talking about? We're talking about cause and effect now. You see what I'm saying? When he said do unto others as you would do unto yourself, what does that mean? That's the power of cause and effect. That's you learning right from wrong. That's you learning the anode versus the cathode. Abel versus Cain. Adam versus Eve. You see what I'm saying? Solomon versus Delilah. Like it's that's the reality of third density, is learning that these so-called religions and these things that are there, they're there to help those of us that are still striving to understand this level of the exercise. Yet this is not the exercise itself. This is just a part of it. And if you get locked into the part of it that you are now working to make the exercise the reality, you see, now we have a problem because now you've fallen into it. Now you are a part of it. And now it has jurisdiction over you, you see, because you've given it limited power. Now it has consciousness. Now it could demand things like incense, like sex, like blood, like sweets. See what I'm saying? That's why having a nationality or a certain practice of spirituality, religion, or whatever also protects you from other so-called religious demonstration and possession. It's crazy. Like I used to have mad, like I had a grand altar in my crib at one point for years, and it was, I felt like things was working and we was moving and all of that, and then things started not going right and all of that, and I'm feeling like, what am I not doing? And you see, it becomes this thing of what I'm not doing, but then it is at the same time, it's like, but yeah, but ain't these niggas, ain't I doing this to see a result from these niggas, and I'm not seeing that? Nah, some gotta give. So I shut that whole thing down, got rid of everything, the candles, the statue, all of that. And after that, shit start flowing. You know what I'm saying? So again, I'm not telling you not to believe in nothing, not to give up your religion. I'm just saying don't be, man becomes the fool for the divinity he worships. Don't worship. What does it say? Judaism, human nature. Genesis 4:22. Then the Lord God said. Now, when they say the Lord God, they talk about Baal. Lord
In the Hebrew, get the strongest concordance of translation of the Bible. Get that book and go look up what Lord mean. Lord also mean Baal. Lord God can mean Baal or Moloch. You know what I'm saying? Islam. Excellent. Glad we made it. Behold, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. 23. Therefore, the Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. See, this right here is a Black Hawk altar. Now, like I said, like ceremonially, we are a people who do things for our ancestors and things like that. I'm not saying that those things are evil. I'm saying that when you are supplicating yourself to these things, like when your grandmother was alive, you didn't worship her. When your grandfather was alive, you didn't worship him. You know what I'm saying? Like you didn't do any of that. So why now that they're dead, why are you going to start turning them into a deity now? You don't do that. You treat everybody as good as you can while they're here, while they're in your presence, because you never know. But just because they're gone doesn't mean that they've now become gods. Like they were already that. When you knew them, they was that. You know what I'm saying? That's why you can't get caught up, because like I said, you'll get caught up, and then because there's a priesthood that goes with these people, that goes with these orders, that's standing above all of them to make sure they keep doing the F shit. You wind up with stuff like this, like with the, like I said, with the Jews who created the new version of Israel, which was now going to be the whole, threefold God shit. So it's Isis, Ron, El, but that's really just Baal, Moloch, and Ishtar. You know what I'm saying? And they then, once they got taken up and brought back into Babylon, they then wound up working on some more dark magic, came out with this thing called the Talmud, and then brought that back up to the Esau descendants. And then they basically took that above the so-called Torah, but used the Torah to shield them in their practice of this, and have been using this Talmud and everything, which is Babylonian magic, to be able to enslave the rest of their people into creating a sacrificial slave state. That's basically what that place over there is. That's why they want so many more so-called Ashkenazim type Jews, European Jews, to get over there, because they want to sacrifice them. Look, this is in a Talmud. This is what they say they're supposed to do in a Talmud. All right, this is from their Talmud. It say, the Mishnah. It has already been established that the previous Mishnah above 10 that a woman who is presumed to be a virgin at the time of her marriage is entitled to a ketubah, right, which is 21 dinarum, right? Dinarum, that's Moorish money, from the dinars, which is coming from those who are descendant of the Danes, who those Danes, Picts, Celts, all of them is the Druids. All of them is the offshoot of the Israel people that we talking about that set all of this type of shit up. Okay? So when they talk about the sea peoples that ravaged Egypt and all of that and collapsed the Bronze Age, their descendants wound up going back around through the Mediterranean up into Europa, and then set up shop in Albion and all of that, and eventually became the Britons, the Picts, the Celts, the Danes, the Nordic, and all them type of niggas. Okay? Boom. Whereas a woman who is presumed to be a non-virgin at the time of her marriage is entitled to 2 ketubah and 100 denarum amana. The Mishnah we are about to consider continues in its efforts to determine which women are considered virgins for the purpose of the ketubah and treated as non-virgins. If a grown-up man has had intercourse with a little girl less than 3 years old, or if a young boy less than 9 years old has had intercourse with a grown woman, or if a woman has been injured by a stick as a result of her hymen being ruptured. So that means they sticking sticks up these women. In each of these cases, the woman is entitled to the ketubah of 200 denarim when she marries. A girl who engages in intercourse when she is less than 3 is still considered a virgin, for her hymen will grow back. What? What? Yes. So that's in their religion. You understand? That's their religion, because they God told them that this is how they were able to do that, because they believe in accessing what they call the typhonian tunnel, which is the core spirit that exists in the orchid gland of the little boy or the little girl. And they are actually believe that they are able to become immortal by injecting themselves, inseminating themselves into this child. So that way, whenever they become, when the child grows, they grow and become a part of the child's consciousness and eventually take over the child's consciousness. This is what they believe. I'm telling you, this is why they do that. So again, this is why they want to have total control over their religious practices and this, and that. This is why human trafficking is a big thing. This is where all of this is coming from. Because like I said, what these things are serving, they are serving the so-called stars, the fallen stars. You understand? That's who they worship, because these are the Luciferian spirits that have been cast out and exist in a non-physical form and cannot have any jurisdiction in the physical world until the day of judgment. Yet and still within us. So that's them on the left. On the right, this is what exists within all of us with active pineal organs. So when I say that we are all of them on the inside, right? But we have the ability to experience the joy and the power of life. They exist on the outside and can only affect it incorporeally, unless they have help. Somebody putting a finger on the scales, trying to do shit to help inject and engender them to come back in. That's what the whole Antichrist shit is about. That's what the whole Thoth was the great one. And let me tell you something, there's no such thing as the Emerald Tablets. The Emerald Tablets never existed. That was made up by a white science fiction writer. I forget his name. You understand? There's no way beings that are zoomorphic have the same energetic path that we do. You don't have nothing in common with a bird-headed person. You have more in common with the birds than the bird-headed person, because the bird-headed person is coming from a reality in which he was created at a time when he wasn't supposed to exist. He's created out of perdition. Therefore, no matter what he represents on his physical, it's something totally different. That's why they hated Akhenaten, because Akhenaten said, we're not going to do no rituals anymore to the dead virgins. We're going to put everything through the sun. We're going to worship the sun. We're going to make it about the light. This nigga went so far, he took all the roofs off the temples. Well, you could only do supplications at night. So what happened to Khonsu? What happened to Anubis? What happened to all of the night deities? They couldn't do their rituals and nothing no more. That's a whole class of people now out of work. That's a whole group of entities no longer getting fed. What you think they're gonna do? They had to get him up out of here. You know what I'm saying? Him and his family, and strict the whole record. Same thing they did with how we did before that, though. We did it to them by wiping out the whole record of the Hereshef. So they couldn't even use the word Hereshef no more. So they got to use other words like Heracles and Heracleum, right? And Hera.
That's why we gotta. Those who don't know history is doing to repeat it. That's why they don't want you to know anything about that, the ancient world, and the fact that these ancient worlds and these alternate realities exist within us right now. That's why they work so hard to get us to co-sign their reality. So everything these Hebrew people got, or people calling themselves Hebrew got, they took from somebody else. And they chose themselves to be chosen. And from that, they fulfill the will of their God, who they have now created and multiplied into the creator deity that we know it to be today. But that's not always what it was. You know what I'm saying? So everybody doing them circumambulation at Mecca and all of that, that's basically another form of magnetic energy transference. If you take if you take a magnet and you put a bunch of iron filaments around it and you start turning the magnet, you know what's going to happen? All of the filaments is going to start turning in the same direction. Ain't that what they be doing in Mecca? Ain't that what they doing? Don't at least 2,000 people die at Hajj every year? Y'all know that, right? From the time it start to the time it end, people be dying going to make pilgrimage. How do they inject themselves into the altar? The dirty Freemasons, what they do is they have a whole ritual where they get the child and they get the child to be held down, and then they enter into the child, you know what I mean, in the most horrific way, and they intone so much energy, negative energy, into that child through that area, and then they do it multiple times. So everybody that's holding the child down get a turn. So by that time now the child been altered, been fractured. So for every one person who's assaulted this child, the child probably creates 2 to 5 different altars to combat the trauma from that individual. I did a video called Porcelain Doll Programming where when I was really going into all of that stuff, but we can build on that again one day in the future. Yeah, but it's the semen, but it's all of the negative energy entombed in the semen. So the semen is just a cudgel for the energy. They be dying from the weather, they be dying from being trampled, they be dying from being killed. You have cults out there that are connected to, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood they deal with the real Allah, which is the demon that I showed y'all in class a couple months ago, and they kidnap people for sacrifice in the desert with them. With that, it's a big thing. That's why they wanted to get rid of anything that would tie us to something beyond their control. That's why they don't like us being Moors, because again, that predates their occupation. Brother said, I saw a Shriner at the airport receiving a child from a mother and a father who were dropping the child off to him. He had a fez on, tassel pinned down, and everything. Exactly. Islam, or yes, they passing him up because they have the Masonic bride ceremony. You know what I'm saying? When they get the little boy and they put him in the wedding dress, and then he marries the worshipful master, and now they start the thing. That's the pederast thing. That's the Talmud thing that I just showed y'all. Pedestry, that's a part of the Masonic stance. That's a part of the Masonic ritual. It's part of it. It's part of what they call the high degrees, which are really low degrees. But you know what I'm saying? That's when you really up in there, when you warlocking. Anybody else? Do you have any questions? Yeah, they create the circumstance, the wedding, or what the Crowley called it, the chemical wedding. That's what they called it in the ritual. Anybody have any other questions? The Saint Germain Trust is connected to the black nobility, being that Saint Germain allegedly was an immortal who keep popping up at different points in history, or they keep saying that he is that, but who's to say? But that's what they believe. And that trust is connected to, is like most of the so-called trust that's locked up with the Moors. We just don't have direct access because of all of the black gatekeepers, all the Moorish gatekeepers that's keeping it under wraps. You know. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, that's the problem. These gods always want the youngest amongst us because they have the most power, and they represent that which is closest to the creator, to the foundation. So they can control the next generation through this type of behavior, you know. And mad people be supporting it, and they think that it's just a sexual deviancy, and it's more than that. It's way more than that, B. You know what I mean? Anybody else? Yeah, well, Syria is about to collapse. That's been happening a long time, and that can go back to a class we talked about. Where I talked about the plan for the new American century. That's still going on. So the last country that needs to fall for them to be able to put through all of this is what you call it, is Iran. And remember, Iran is who's really controlling the Vatican, who's really controlling um the black popes in them, and they're connected to the the bloodline families. They're all working together. Um, a universal law is a law regardless. So if you intended to defraud these people from the time that they gave you the loan, then you're going to receive the karma for that. You see what I'm saying? You're going to receive the karma for that because there was a lot of people who may have needed that and didn't get it because you chose to be things. So now they coming at everybody. It's a cause, like I said, more cause and effect. Just like this on the screen, they think they could do this to little children and keep this thing going, and there's no repercussions for it because their God says that they give them the right to do it. That's why you can't let no gods drive you insane. You know. So again, man, I give thanks. I thank you guys for coming through and building, of course. If you haven't already, definitely check out the ADOT app. For those that haven't, definitely give thanks and for the support for everybody that's been tuning in and holding it down, spreading the word. I really appreciate it. Definitely check that out. Also check out www.aseerthedugateers.com. If you haven't already, I got all of the links up there. You can definitely check that out. Also, check out www.cordobaorganics.com for all your great Moorish American health and skincare needs. No, God knows we need it. Lord knows we need it. Inshallah. So definitely check that out. Anybody have any questions about anything or whatever about your individual processes, you can definitely hit me up at houseofel at hotmail.com. Again, I really appreciate it, man. Anybody else have any questions before we close out? Between now and next summer, probably. However, it's going to be harder for them to get that off. Trust me. Well, I don't like saying that, but I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk the way that they want because there's too many people in. Plus, the actual release, the one that's scheduled, is not scheduled until May, I think, 2028. And that's the Z something virus. I got the exact date and time. I got it from some obscure site or whatever. I'll find it and I'll show you in the next joint. So we got time before they do that. Also, they going in on these people now. They just killed the healthcare dude. Remember the healthcare dude? They was knee deep with Pfizer and them denying people's claims and all of that. So something else going on more. Like it ain't gonna be that easy. People popping these CEOs now in the street. In the street, fam. So you know what I mean? It ain't gonna be a cakewalk. It's gonna be a cakewalk in the morning and they think it's gonna be that easy. Yes, there'll be a economic downtrend, but I think that that can be rectified if you start to convert a lot of your stuff into hard assets now, you know, gold, silver, even cash, just keeping some of that around, putting it into land, things like that. Anybody else? I've never used XRP, so I don't know how to do the nonce to them. Or anybody else? So yeah, check out those books that I talked about in the joint, and then inshallah we'll reconvene. All right. Thank you guys again for the support. We really appreciate it, man. Long live the empire. Peace.